Hello, everybody, and welcome to Equality and Diversity in the Music Industry with Music Industry Insights Worldwide Volume 2. And today we have the fabulous Carrie and David Grant with us. Hello.
Hello. We're so pleased to be here. This is very exciting.
Thank you so much for coming on the show and taking the time out today to come and speak to us and share your views. Really do appreciate that.
That's really lovely. Thank you so much for asking us.
That's okay. That's my pleasure. Would you like to tell the viewers both about yourselves, what you do in the music industry, and the journeys, both your unique journeys?
In the music industry, I'm a radio presenter. I'm a vocal coach. I'm a vocal arranger and a vocal producer, a songwriter, and occasionally a singer. My journey started as the lead singer of a group in the 1980s, having hits called Links, and then I had solo hits, and then began to arrange and produce other people. And that kind of led from one thing to another, which ended up with us being on TV, on talent shows, sort of teaching people how to sing first and then judging them.
Fantastic. Carrie?
Yes, that's David. And I came into the industry in the early 80s as a dancer initially. I was a dancer on a program called Top of the Pops. And at the same time, at the age of 16, I had my first record deal. And I think by the age of 17, I had my second record deal. That's the music industry for you. And then I met David when I was 20, and very quickly we started to work together singing. So initially that was me singing on David's music, and then we were asked to arrange and sing on other people's music, and that became like the beginning, I guess, of what felt like our purpose.
Yes.
Because what we would do is, if we had 6 singers on a session, or we could have like 60 singers on a session, but if there were 6 on a session, we would take 2 people in who were absolute professionals and have been in the music business for years, and then we'd pull in 2 people who'd never ever done a session but were great singers
and desperate to sort of get it.
Yeah. So I guess really David and I just glorified ushers. And then a lot of the work that David has said that he's done, I've also done, because we started coaching. Our first clients were Take That.
Wow.
And that put us on the road to coaching all of those, well, not all of them, but a lot of the boy and girl bands of the day. So it was like S Club 7, Atomic Kitten, 911, the Spice Girls. Yeah, so that was really exciting. And actually just at the age where we were feeling that actually mentoring was just as important as teaching people technique or being performers ourselves. You know, we still perform, it's great, but I think a lot of what makes our hearts sing is really supporting other artists. The glory of sitting in the audience and watching your artist deliver something you know they weren't able to do, or you know the journey they've done with that song and their life, and that's our great pleasure.
Beautiful. That's really nice to hear, and thanks for sharing that. So as a multiracial couple in the industry, share some of your challenges, some of the challenges you've had to face and the barriers you've had to overcome to get to where you are today.
Well, I would say certainly for me, when I started in the early 80s, it was really kind of like one in, one out. You know, if a black group was successful, that meant that another black group wasn't. And I think that I was really kind of, I was going to say fortunate, but I think sometimes timing is everything. When you're part of a movement, like I was part of at that time, like the Brit funk movement, and we came in at the spearhead of that, in as much as we were among the first groups to have sustained hits. And, you know, that sort of like enabled me to see things in the business that I wouldn't have known when I was outside. Like, for instance, certainly at that time, if you had 2 records, and one was by a pop group or a rock group, and the other was by a soul group or a reggae group, one would get the budget and the other one would get a significantly lower budget. And music was very categorized by race. So you had a group like Hot Chocolate, who were a pop band, and they were a soul band because, you know, like half of them were black. Or you get someone like Labi Siffre, singer-songwriter who wrote, you know, Something Inside So Strong, that guy, Labi's an amazing writer. And people would, you go into a record shop and you see him under soul or R&B. He's not an R&B singer. If he had less melanin, he'd have been under folk or pop.
Yeah.
So The challenge, I think, was actually people, certainly at that time, was people seeing you as an artist and not defining your art by your color.
I think actually as a mixed race couple, I think that societally, when we met in the 80s, it was difficult. I think it was a different environment. This is before Stephen Lawrence died, and everything changed really, I think, after his murder. I think that sort of, it challenged the institution. Once we had institutionalized racism, we hadn't really heard about that word before. I hadn't anyway. And that just felt really huge. And I think things did change after that. We've still got a long way to go. But I think for us as a couple, things changed. I think in the industry, I have to say, I don't know that it's made a huge amount of difference being a mixed race couple. I think I've had issues, you know, just being a strong woman in music, and David has had issues being a black man in music. But I think the actual mixed race thing, would you say there's been anything?
No,
I can't really think of anything. I think most people have been fine with that.
That's good. So as a woman then, Carrie, what are your challenges and what have those barriers been as a woman in the industry? What have you faced?
Yeah. Well, I think that women have been given, it really is the absolute classic glass ceiling. So you're allowed into the industry if you're beautiful. You're allowed into the industry if you can sing a song, and a man, normally a white man, is behind that project, and then lots of white men promote it and produce it and package it. And then you might meet a woman in, this is back in the day, you might meet a woman in the international department or PR perhaps, but just in those regular A&R departments, female producers, there weren't many back then. I remember, you know, meeting people like Kathy Dennis, and it was like, oh my gosh, she writes, she produces, that's just mad. That felt so daring.
It felt rare, didn't it?
It felt rare, yeah. And I think these days that's we've still got such a long way to go. Oh my gosh! But I think there's big changes in that, you know. And I think with any marginalized group, you know, the whole idea of getting rid of whatever that kind of empire system has created, it's created patriarchy, it's created this space for white men, and lovely as they are, they're not the only people in the world. So it's to make room for new people, different people, those people have to move out the way, which, so in principle, ideologically, they might go, wow, this is such an important thing to have representation. Oh, that means I might have to move out the way,
or have less of a
slice of the cake. Suddenly it's problematic. So I think that's been the same, whether that's women breaking into the industry, whether that's black people, whether that's trans people, gay people, any of those, neurodivergent people, all of those groups that are disabled people. There's so many groups, aren't there?
Yes.
But just making space means, you know, and I guess the question that is constantly being asked is, well, is there enough room for all these groups? Couldn't these people join and those people join? And it threatens people. So it's a slow process.
It's too slow.
And it's way too slow.
We're talking about when we came in, and that's 4 decades ago, and some of the issues and some of the challenges are identical.
Yeah.
What would they be? What identical challenges would there still be right now, David?
Good question.
I think for me, the identical challenges are that the gatekeepers are still representative of the majority. Now there are black A&R people, there weren't then. Now there are women in positions of power, way more than there were then, but still nowhere near the number of white men. And I think that you do have a situation where people can still act as gatekeepers. You know, I really am, I'm delighted about the democratization of music, where people can get their music out, they can get it on the internet, they can get it on streaming services, they can get it on YouTube. However, unless you have an unlimited budget, you are still going to, at some point, require the help of a record company. And the minute you do that, you have to get past the gatekeepers. And so here we are, 40 years after we joined the party, and you look, and the DJ's still the same, and the bouncers are still the same, and the people stopping you from getting to the VIP area are still the same.
Interesting point. Thank you for sharing that. And also, as as both parents, how has that brought challenges to your career and what you do?
Massive challenges.
Yeah.
I think I remember when David and I had an album out in the mid-90s and we needed to promote it, and we just had a child, and it was the two of us together. I mean, it won a MOBO award, so it was really successful in that way. It was great. But I remember thinking, the record company saying, you know, you're going to have to tour it. And I was just thinking, I don't know how to do that. How do I do that? I'm not sure how that works. We've got a child at that age who was in nursery. And so how do we tour it? You know, even just simple things like that. It's fine when your child is very, very little, because you can just take them with you. But once they get into the structure of school and things, it's a lot harder. So I would say that has been a challenge. But I think also our children, because they are all neurodivergent with a whole number of intersections in their lives, you know, neurodivergence, they're mixed race, they're a combination of different sexualities and genders. And I think I feel like they've grown us up, quite frankly. I feel like they have taught us so much that we needed to know. It's been like going to school, just raising these children. And that to me is a real privilege. So whatever they bring, in the sense that sometimes we've had to be full-time carers because of their mental health issues. On the other hand, there are things that we do now that we would never have been able to do had we not had these experiences.
You know, there's a philosophy that is it's confusing until you're in it. And it's a statement that I heard before I had children. I thought, what a load of nonsense. But I get it now, which is the child is the parent of the father. The child is the parent of the mother. The child's basically the parent of the parent, because till you have children, you're not a parent.
Yeah.
At the point that you become a parent,
who's learning,
you learn about that child and about the things, you know, like I was absolutely certain that I could parent until I had to do it.
There's no books there on parenting or how to do the right parenting.
Yeah, no, exactly. But I think also one of the things, Saskia, that is really amazing, and maybe you found this too, is if you're a creative, you bring your children up to understand their creativity. And I have loved that. I mean, my mum was very encouraging, but she wasn't creative. I grew up with just my mum. And I think I look at my children and what they have access to, and I just think, wow, I wish I'd have had that. You know, we're sitting here with a big piano and guitars, and I had, you know, I just had my little recorder. Do you know what I mean? And a tape recorder, and that was it. That was like that was your studio back in the 1970s. So I look at my children, I think the opportunities that they have, and to make music and release music, everything that David said, the way that the power is in the hands of the kids in their bedrooms.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love that. I think that the opportunities that they have and their generation has are much greater than ours.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing all this with us. That's so important. And I'm sure there's so many viewers out there that this will just bring music to their ears, because they know that they're not the only ones that are parents that have to go through that, you know? So how have you done that? Has anyone supported you in what you do? Do you get support from your workplaces that you do? Or how does that work?
You answer that one.
I think you should answer that. You can tell by how hard that question is to answer.
That is such a good question. My goodness.
Who supports us? We do have support, actually. We have a number of people who aren't, some are in the industry and some aren't, actually. I love that combination of being able to just text a friend and go, is this a bit weird, this situation I'm in with this manager or this situation? And they can give you really good advice. But I also like talking to people that are just outside the industry, who don't have any of the BS and who will just love you because you're Carrie and David. And I guess a combination of those people is really healthy. And I think also because David and I live together, work together, and have done so for 37 years. I think because of that, we probably are that for one another.
Yes. I think it's really hard to do this without support. I think it's hard to do anything in the arts without support, whether that be family. You know, we've got members of our family who've been supportive, but not necessarily in like hands-on, but just encouraging, or friends, or people who will say, yeah, I'll take care of that. I'll walk the dog, I'll feed the cat, I'll look after the babies, you know, off you go. I think it's really hard, but it's not just hard on a practical level. And that's why I really had to think about it, and why this is such a good question. Because I think if you're a creative, you spend a lot of time in your head. And sometimes you actually need to get out of your head, which means that you need to speak to people. But it has to be the right people.
Yeah.
Because the number of people I know who, you know, they'll go, I'm fed up, nothing's working, I keep running up against a brick wall, I've got no support, I've got no money, I've got no contacts, I've got nothing. And their friends will say, you're absolutely right, why don't you give up and get a 9-to-5 job? And that's not what you need. What you actually need is to be able to sound off, to let all the frustration out, to let all the negativity out, and find beneath that layer of negativity is the gold.
Yeah.
But if you do it with the wrong people, all they hear is the negativity. They don't hear your need to communicate your frustration.
Yeah, and our industry is totally frustrating, you know, and that's not just with when you're struggling for success. Navigating actual success is hard, you know, and I know that people that haven't yet got success will go, that's great, you know, it's fine for you to say, but it comes with challenges. And I think one of the things, I did this about 10 years ago, and it was so helpful, was I wrote myself a contract.
Oh, this is brilliant.
And it's got like my address, it's got everything on it. It's like, dear to Carrie, I will only listen to the opinions of the following people. And then I've got 5 names. And then I have put yours sincerely, and I've signed it. Amazing. And this is my contract with myself. So every now and again, when the haters show up, I'm like, I'm just going back to my contract. I don't see your name here. Actually, my people on my contract, those are the people that I'm listening to. So that means, yes, I'm accountable, but I'm not accountable to everybody. And I don't have to listen to everybody. I just have to listen to the people I know who genuinely have my best interests at heart, and who believe in me and who want me to succeed.
Great advice. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that advice. And I'm sure the viewers do too. So if you could share your thoughts and feelings on equality and diversity and inclusion in the music industry at this moment in time, what are your views and your thoughts?
Well, certainly my views are that every time somebody gets up and is individual, people go, yeah, everybody has a right to be individual, just don't be too individual. Everybody has a right to be themselves. Don't just make yourself too different to me. Otherwise, you are going to come up against people who want you to be the person that they want you to be. I think that one of the things about the creative arts that attracts people and that draws people is that they themselves are creative, but also there is a latitude, there's the scope, there's the freedom to be who you are. And I think that, you know, so much of the criticism, so much of the flack that people who get criticism and flack get for being who they are comes from outside of the arts. You know, and it comes from places where people want to repress individuality. They want people to fit into their boxes. And I think, hey, where are we in recording? You know, I was watching the Sam Smith video the other day. Yeah, and I noticed people commenting specifically on their video and some saying, this is Sam Smith being Sam Smith, bravo Sam Smith, and others saying, why can't Sam Smith be the way that I wanted Sam Smith to be? Mm-hmm. You know, and I think to myself, there is still a way to go. But it's really important that whoever you are as a creative, whoever you are as an artist, you express that, knowing that actually you're representing somebody. Your voice is representing people's voices who aren't heard. Your opinion is framing and giving a vocabulary to other people who don't have your vocabulary, whether that vocabulary is a singer, a writer, an actor, a dancer, a sculptor, whatever. That actually, if 9 out of 10 people are saying no, 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 fine. You're singing for that one. You're writing for that one. You're dancing for that one. And there are enough of that one who look and say, thank you, because I wasn't represented before you represented me. I wasn't heard before you raised your voice.
I have a slightly different view to David. I feel that I'm going to contrast, because I feel both things. I hold a space that is quite complex. So on one hand, I find it totally depressing that we haven't seen more doors opened for all the, the different marginalized people. That really keeps me awake at night.
Yeah,
it really does. It's my life's goal and wish to see inclusion happen. And as far as I'm concerned, it hasn't happened. We're nowhere near where we should be. For many people, it's still a life of oppression. It's still a life of closed doors. Yeah. So on the one hand, I feel like this is really awful. Yeah. However, like David said, when you dig a little deeper underneath that, I have such hope. I see moments, and this is what I hold on for. And we must not let go of the hope that we have. When I looked at the Grammys and I saw an older lady give, no, not even Bonnie Raitt. Yeah, Bonnie Raitt's great. Yeah, I wasn't even talking about. I saw an older lady give an award to a non-binary person and a trans woman. Yeah, and I saw a woman with the most Grammys ever. That was cause for rejoicing. Now, I hate the fact that people had lots to say about that. That really disappoints me when it's negative, particularly about Madonna. I think that was just so uncalled for. Older women are older women. They can look how they want to look. Stop body shaming people and let them be who they are. But, Sam Smith, like David said, they are really amazing and really breaking ground. And to have a trans woman winning an award is like, it's for important. Your community, Safia, that's incredible, isn't it? And so we are, that's a wonderful thing.
Yes.
But let's not make it back to where David started this conversation, where it's one in, one out. Let's okay, that's a beginning. Yeah. So let's follow through with that. Where's the next, and where's the next, and where's the next? And let's have a few more. And let's just, until there's true equality, of course, I'm always going to have something to bitch about.
Yeah, let it not be somebody says, we got a trans singer or we got a trans group, they're fantastic, and somebody else say, oh, we've already got one of those.
Yeah, I hate all that.
Because listen, talent is not an equal opportunities employer. You can't say, we only need 2 talented people from this community, we only need 2 from that community. If somebody has talent and something to say, it's the prerogative of the business to give them a space to say it.
And I also long, eventually, I think at the moment it's really important that we have labels. I think labels are helpful, but I do believe that ultimately it will be lovely to get beyond labels, where you release a record and a woman's released a record. My autistic child is on telly and it's just my child.
A child, yeah.
A child, and I think that's where there's an acceptance that we get beyond the even, then we truly have hit the sweet spot.
Yeah.
Just bringing up about the Grammys, 13.6% of Grammy nominees were women from 2013 to 2022. That is really, really sad, isn't it? When you actually look at the facts.
It's a bit like the Brits, where they say, we're not going to make it gendered now. We're just going to have Artist of the Year. It's given them an opportunity to have all men.
Did that work? I think we just slightly went backwards on that one there.
I think so. But doesn't it show it makes the initial point about inclusion and diversity, which is that people do tend to gravitate towards themselves.
Yeah.
Because that's where they feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And
We
I
see
think,
this in leadership, actually. Sorry
Yeah.
to cut across
No,
you, but
right.
in leadership, people will employ the person that looks and sounds and is like them. So what you have is people that grew up wealthy and were privately educated, and the white men in their 50s will look for another white man because, hey, that's our guys. These are the people that work. They're like us.
Yeah.
I'm going to employ someone just like me. And that's how leadership historically has been done. And that's what needs to change. And it is changing, I have to say. So we're moving from that kind of hero leader to more of an asset-based leader, which is what's inside you. What have you got? What do you bring? And actually, the outer shell is kind of irrelevant. What matters is what you bring. And so when people start to hire on that basis, that to me is if you are a leader in whatever you do in your life, if you are a leader and you want to create legacy, create something that isn't a carbon copy, create something that is about asset-based leadership, that is about, let's bring, this person was better than I am, this person brought more than I had, this person took it to the next level.
Yes.
Let's will people to stand on our shoulders rather than feeling like I just want someone who's a bit like me and a carbon copy. Let's will things to be bigger and better and more extraordinary and more diverse.
Also, you know what, talk about women and the paucity of women nominees at the Oscars. You know, let's just look at the American music business for a minute. Sorry,
The Grammys.
Yeah, the paucity of women nominees at the Grammys. Let's just look at the American music business at the minute. You know, in America, I can't think of 4 male artists who were bigger in terms of sales and chart impact than Taylor Swift, Beyonce, Adele, and Rihanna.
Yeah.
The fact that, you know, what is it? 1 in 7 nominees is a woman is appalling. It's appalling. What it does show, though, I believe, is that even though women may make up 50% of the population, they're underrepresented in the music business.
Yeah.
I don't think that if you look at every 100 albums released, you will find that 50 of them are by women, which shows that actually in the business itself, there still is a long way to go to have equal representation.
The Bonnie rate is considered unknown.
Yeah, when you've got an English daily newspaper saying unknown Bonnie Raitt, what you mean the Bonnie Raitt who's been a star for 50 years? You mean the Bonnie Raitt who already had 13 Grammys before last weekend? That yeah. Bonnie Raitt?
It's crazy, isn't it, sometimes?
Lord give us strength.
And I think that's another thing that you mentioned is like, it's not being representative. Another stat was that parents represent 26% of the workforce compared to an average of 46% of the general population. Again, what does that show? Is the music industry very supportive to parents? Does it really support parents in the workplace?
Wow, that's such a good question. I didn't even know those stats.
I think I know what it means. I think what it means is that when men and women begin in the music business and they're not parents, and men and women become parents, there's greater expectations societally on women to give up their jobs than there is on men. I can't think that many men in the music business give up their, in comparison to women, give up their jobs because they have become parents. So I still think that that same old thing, which is, hey, you're the mother, you should be at home. I think that that's still somewhere in the back of the minds and in the psyche of not just the music business, but our society. There are people who I have seen arguing, intelligent people, genuinely arguing that they think women should be at home.
I think there's possibly also, and I alluded to this earlier, talking about the Madonna situation. I think there's a love of the young in our industry, and of course there should be. You know, that the heritage and the inheritance that we have from the 50s, when suddenly rock and roll came along and young people were empowered, and then the 60s, it was like, my gosh, young people have really got this going. Was so important and really valid. However, there is a wisdom that comes with age that I think we miss out on that wisdom if we don't include older people. Of course, I'm going to say that because I'm an old girl now, but I do think that there needs to be a representation for older artists as well. I think that and older people in the business side of the business, because I think it's very, particularly in the artists, I think it's very. I remember, you know, artists, perhaps it's slightly better these days, but maybe 10 years ago, if you were over 20, you were old. You were not going to get signed if you were over 20. It was fine if you were already having hits, but no way would you get signed if you're over 20. People were lying about their age constantly because they were 22. Yeah. You know, I mean, my goodness. And what someone has or hasn't got to give at that age, you know, and of course there are some artists that are born old, aren't they? They're just born with loads of wisdom, but a lot of our artists only come into their own as they mature and they develop and they get rid of some of their needs for being in the industry and are just simply doing it for the music. And then, you know, we miss out on a lot.
We do, because it's weird to think that for a lot of people, the point in their lives where they know what to do with the gifts that they've got and they have the wisdom to deal with success, if they've had success, is the point where people hand them their P45 and said, okay, you've had your time, next.
Yeah.
You know, and they're out. And that seems to me to be a crazy waste of talent, because talent is multi-generational, but equally important, if you're looking at the music business as a business, the market is multi-generational.
It's easier to exploit younger artists, I guess, than it is an older artist or an artist that's more experienced. So maybe
yeah, you're not wrong there.
Yes. So true.
If I could ask you some knowledgeable information that you could pass on to anyone trying to get into the industry, what advice would that be if you could pass something on?
You go first. I'm going to have a think.
I think that there are so many different avenues in these days, and yet there are so many obstructions. I would say if you have a dream, if you have a goal, and if you have the work ethic to turn your dream and your goal into something, do not give up. I would say when somebody says you can't do it, it means you can't do it with them. Don't give up. Because it doesn't matter if 99 people say, no, you haven't got it. All it takes is one. All it takes is one. And if you're a self-starter and you're thinking, gosh, I need to get traction, just keep going, keep going, keep going. Do not give in.
Amazing advice.
I would say that, I'm going to say a really corny phrase now that I've just made up in my head, which is that living the dream is about building the team. I don't think it's sustainable or possible for most people to have every gift that is required to have a successful career. So you might be a great songwriter, you might be brilliant visually, you might have ideas and be really, really creative. Chances are you're going to need someone to promote you, you're going to need people around you, someone who knows about marketing, someone who knows about management. And I think actually teams are what keep that drive going, that keep it alive, that keep the dream, you know, going. And I don't think it takes much to build that around you. No. I think that's what we need is for people to put the right teams around them. Once the team is right, then there's every chance that your music will get in front of the right people, but you can't expect to do it yourself. And many of our creative songwriters, singers are people who have hyper focus. So that means they can be really distracted and all of, oh, I'm doing this now, I'm going over here, I'm going over here now. And then when they get something they like, they really, really focus until something else comes along, and then they're really, you know, distracted. And I think that's quite normal for artists. That could possibly be the gift of ADHD. But that hyper focus is something that's both a gift and also something that's going to be a challenge,
Mhm.
because you're going to need a life. You're going to need to live a life. You can't be hyper-focused the whole time. You're also going to need those people that can carry the weight whilst you're in your distracted mode. You know, that's how David and I work. I'm really good at lining everything up and organizational stuff. And David is really good at kind of explosive 1 hour of work, and he'll just get loads done. And then he just needs to look out a window and scroll on his phone and chat to the world, because David likes to chat to the entire world every day. So that's him. Whereas me, I'm head down for 10 hours and then I stop, and then I'm like, right, that's me done. I'm now going to socialize, or not, as the case may be. But you know, understanding those strengths, and so building a team is so important, because you can't expect to do that all on your own. Like, hello, no, guys, just you know, find people around you to support you. And those people might change. Sometimes those things are seasonal as well. This person got me to this stage, but they can't get me to the next stage. So
absolutely,
knowing that you're going to have to let go. That's another thing that we could talk about, is how we end relationships. When people come to work for us, David and I always say, how's it going to end? That's one of my first questions when I interview people. How is this relationship going to end? When we stop working with you, I don't want you to go away feeling bitter and angry and like we let you down. I want you to go away feeling like, actually, I did 2 years with those guys,
and they empowered me to the next place. It
was great, and it was the season to move on. So when someone sits, my first question is, are you a bridge burner? Because if someone's a bridge burner, you don't want them in your life, right? Because the minute you have a problem, they're going to literally burn their bridges, and they're going to hate you, and they're going to spread rumors about you. So it's better. How do you end things well? How is this going to end? How do we end this well? And just knowing that some things are seasonal. Some people are going to be with you for life, and those people, wow. Some people are just with you for a season, and knowing the difference is important.
Yeah, I'm sorry, can I just add to that as well? If you are the rocket, okay, when a rocket starts, it needs the propulsion of the whole rocket to get off the ground. Then it needs to shed, because it's going to be too heavy to break out of Earth's atmosphere. Then it needs to shed more, because it's carrying too much weight to break into the stratosphere. Then it needs to shed more in case, you know, because it's going to go further and further and further out into space, into its own orbit, towards its destiny. So when people fall away, you shouldn't think, that's terrible, I've lost a friend. You think, that's incredible, because they took me to here. I wouldn't be here without them, but now our roads are diverging. We're still friends, but we're not walking together like that. That's fine. I applaud them, they applaud me. Let's go into our atmospheres together.
David is really an expert on space travel.
Thank you both so much. We're running out of time now, so I'm going to have to end this podcast, but I've really enjoyed both of you coming on. I've learned so much, and I'm sure the viewers are going to love this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Saskia.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Speak to you both soon.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.